this framework for me came out, 2019 when I was working with executive leaders, some of them women, who were just super hesitant to represent some of their best wins, hesitant to show up in certain spaces, to speak in certain spaces. And what I realized is that they just weren't giving themselves permission. There was nothing external, Candy, that was telling them you can't do these things. They had to give themselves permission.
Welcome to She Coaches Coaches, the podcast where we have thoughtful, honest conversations about what it really takes to build a thriving coaching business. I'm your host, Candy Motzek, and before building my business, I spent years as a senior corporate leader. Now, today, I work with coaches who are smart, well-trained, and deeply capable, and who want clarity about how to grow in a way that feels aligned and financially sustainable. On this show, I sit down with successful coaches to explore the real decisions behind their success, how they got started, what shifted as they grew, and the mindset and business choices that helped them gain momentum without burning out. Whether you're early in your coaching journey or refining a business you've already built, She Coaches Coaches is here to offer perspective, confidence, and grounded insight to support your next chapter. To learn more about how I work with people, go to my website, stepintosuccessnow.com. And now let's dive in. Hey, and welcome to this episode of She Coaches Coaches. I'm your host, Candy Motzek, and I have a special guest here for you today. Her name is Liz Lopez, and she is a powerhouse executive coach, best-selling author, and dynamic speaker who guides corporate leaders and entrepreneurs to life-changing success. With a blend of straight talk, strategy, and encouragement, she inspires live and virtual audiences by revealing their untapped potential and creating clear, actionable paths to achieve meaningful goals. Coach Liz co-authored the best-selling book, Suck It Up, Buttercup, 10 Tough Love Strategies to Get You Off Your Butt and Making Money. And her second book, Permission to Dominate Your Success, came out in 2026. And it's a bold call for individuals to transform their lives by systematically overcoming self-imposed limitations. Welcome to the show, Liz. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, Candy. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
And I have to share for the listeners that you hold the dubious honor of being the only person who the interview didn't go right the first time that we spoke. And I listened to part of the recording and I was just like, ugh, no, I missed the whole power of the conversation. And so I was so glad when I invited you to come back and re-record. And here we are having another conversation, and I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. I'm glad that you thought about it. You invited me back, and let's swing for the fence.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me, what are you most excited about in your work right now?
Great question. This has been a very big transition year for me because there's been so much focus on the book. And my first book, which you mentioned, I published in 2018, and that was fast. Like within 7 months, it was written and out. This one took 7 years. So bringing this new book and also the new framework of the 7 permissions of success is definitely something that has been incredibly exciting, but also a pivot in some of the conversations that I'm having, and I'll briefly summarize why. So much of my coaching is extremely directly, strategically purposeful, right? We're going to get you a new job. We're going to make you a better leader. We're going to get you more joyful profitability in your business. Very, very action specific. And while the permissions certainly are very deeply tied to actions, it's the inner work. Because what I discovered in my past 19 years is the real core of coaching for me has been getting people to get out of their own way so they could execute on all the things that needed to be done.
Yeah, I can really feel that. And I've seen that a lot with my clients as well. We can talk about strategies and tactics and metrics and all of that until the cows come home. But until they get that inner shift, it just doesn't work. So in this new book, you've got the 7 permissions framework. Could you walk me through them just briefly? What are those 7 permissions?
Sure. So we start with permission to fail, because if you don't give yourself permission to fail, you don't give yourself permission to do anything big. Permission to be supported, permission to take baby steps, permission to feel confident today, right now, exactly as you are, permission to prosper so you can better embrace the idea of financial reward. The one I find most challenging at times, permission to walk away, which then all leads to you being ready to give yourself permission to succeed.
So you referred to it as a framework, but it also has that feeling of a bit of a journey. It's like you have to go, sorry about the word have, but it's like you need to, or it's good for you to go through this sort of through like a journey, like an evolution. Do you find that too?
Yes and no, and I'll explain. I do believe that it can be incredibly advantageous for everyone to get the full experience of working through all 7 permissions in that order. What I have found is I'm also doing some micro coaching where we're identifying where groups or individuals feel strongest. Let's celebrate their strong permission, and then let's identify one where they don't feel strong and they want to focus, right? And sometimes that's enough to get them started at that journey, even if they're starting in permission number 3 or permission number 6. Right? It just may be what's most urgent for them in that time.
So maybe they're kind of nested permissions in a way. Yeah. And the word permission, for some reason, it has been coming up a lot in the conversations that I've been having with people. And so it's really interesting that, it's the 7 permissions and the 7 permissions framework. Is there something in that concept of permission that really sparked this framework?
You know, this framework for me came out, 2019 when I was working with executive leaders, some of them women, who were just super hesitant to represent some of their best wins, hesitant to show up in certain spaces, to speak in certain spaces. And what I realized is that they just weren't giving themselves permission. There was nothing external, Candy, that was telling them you can't do these things. They had to give themselves permission. So I've actually been speaking internationally about this concept of permissions since 2019. So I feel it. And now that the word is kind of getting a little more popular, then well, here we go. Right.
It's catching up. It's catching up to what you were already speaking about. And it's interesting what you were saying about they were the ones that had to give themselves permission. And, women in leadership roles, we've all had mixed results. Sometimes we're too aggressive. Sometimes we're not assertive enough. Sometimes the tone of voice. Sometimes we're the only person in the room that's ever looked like that. And so I often wonder, do we perceive that we don't have the permission because maybe early in our career, something happened and it really made a mark. And so we've taken that one event and then kind of painted it with this global brush about, well, that means that I can never speak up. That means do you find that it's,
Absolutely. Whether we call it job hurt, job trauma, toxic poisoning, we build defenses. If something has injured us, scared us, or humiliated us even, we build defenses around like I don't ever want to feel this again, or I don't want to go through that again. And we without realizing kind of create rules for ourselves, even kind of armor that can be really limiting if we're not examining. Sometimes there are important lessons, Candy, that we need to learn at any stage of our career, right? So maybe there was something we needed to learn. But often it was just somebody else's opinion. And a lot of times, somebody else's crappy opinion that then shapes us for 20, 30, 40, 60 years of our career.
yeah, yeah. And there's the ambitious, this word ambitious. When you're an ambitious person, you know that a lot of what you're doing is risky. And then maybe you have one of these scenarios happen and can really take the wind out of your sails. But all of this, when you came back to this idea of the permissions, it's this giving yourself permission to be part of these 7 different permissions. So giving yourself means that we were doing a lot of self-sabotaging.
Mhm.
What kind of self-sabotage is the most common that you've seen? And why do you think it happens?
I'm gonna bring up wow, that's a tough one, Candy, because each one of these 7 permissions is tied to a kind of a piece of self-sabotage, so it's
Okay.
really difficult to say which one specifically, but I will start with the first one because I think it's foundational. Because permission to fail comes from overcoming fear or simply doing it scared. So if you made me choose, then I'm gonna say that fear in all its many different forms is foundational.
Why do you think that's the case?
I think it ties back to exactly what you were saying before, right? Like we have an experience or something happens and it rattled us, so it becomes internalized. So much of what I teach is removing the splinters of internalization. So there are things that from our childhood that we're taught like this is okay and this is not. So we don't want to there's certain places we don't want to go. Kids that grow up being told you're too loud who don't speak up. So that it could be things from how we're raised. It could be things from what we learned in our educational process. It could be job traumas. It could also be, I'll give you an example. My grandparents always told me, after you go to college, get a government job. Get a government job, you're set for life. Well, after college, I went and got me a government job. And 6 years later, I was laid off.
Mm.
Right? So we internalize so much of what we see around, and of course, we have different personalities, Candy. So for some of us, we don't want to hurt people. We're afraid of hurting people. We're afraid of bragging. We're afraid of judgment. There's just so many things that can be scary to us at different levels emotionally, and mentally, that we can build up quite a fortress that we lock ourselves in because we're trying to protect ourselves from all these fears.
That is a really great metaphor, this building up the fortress. And you've sort of alluded to this, building defenses and putting on your armor. There is something here about achieving more in the world, for
Mm.
sure, when you practice the permission framework. But then there is also this allowing yourself to be more of who you are, removing those defenses. Or is that the kind of thing that as you work with your clients, that's even more exciting? Or is that like, for me, that's what I'm always like looking at, like, how are they feeling? How are they showing up? Sure, they might check the box, they've signed a client, but like, what's really going on? What about you? Do you really notice that?
I absolutely do. And I'll tell you that in my work, there's a duality in the success that my clients achieve. And first, I want to say that success looks different for everyone, and everybody's definition of success is valid in their own life. When my clients achieve a specific goal, there is the celebration of the goal. But honestly, the biggest celebration is the challenges that they overcame, the doors that they opened within themselves, the areas where they stretched their comfort zones, and honestly, the confidence that they gained in themselves. Like those internal transformations are by far what I find far most rewarding in my work.
The internal transformation. Do they see it? Do
Oh
your
yeah.
clients see it?
They absolutely do. They come to me and they tell me, like, "I feel liberated from this. I just feel so much stronger. I like who I am now. I feel like I can be myself. I know I don't have to be afraid of this anymore." And I'll tell you, Candy, that for me, these permissions are kind of a lifelong practice because as we get to the next level, there may be new things that scare us and challenge us, right? But if we are building ourselves up, we're better prepared for those. So we may still get weave and bob a little bit as we grow, but maybe we won't be locked up in dungeons anymore.
So people can access your work through the book. I mean, which is that's one of the most amazing things about authoring a book is that it's like it's accessible to anybody who
Mm,
happens to find it at the bookstore, on Amazon or whatever. Of course, they can work with you privately,
mm,
and I know you do keynote speaking. Oh, very good. Show the
mhm.
book. You're
Yeah, there
fuzzy.
we go.
Yeah, you got it. There it
Oh, yeah.
is. So make sure you check out the book on Amazon. But what I'm noticing is we've got everything has sort of a deep value. Taking the book, learning from that, applying it, working with you privately, showing up at a keynote speech. But as you're describing these things and the growth that these clients are having, it really feels like community. Do you have community around the work that you do as well?
I love that you are mentioning that because that is something that is becoming far more important in my world now that I have the book out. So there's a few different things that are happening. I'm doing a lot more group events. So I have several of those already listed on my website. And then April, September, I promise I will pick a date this week. I am launching a group program, 9 weeks to go through every single one of those permissions. And then in 2027, there's a mastermind coming.
Nice. So it's
Mhm.
just this book is like the 7-year labor of love, but also it's a little bit of the seed of all the work that you're going to be doing.
Yes, it is.
What do you think is going to be possible in the world because of this work that you're doing?
I'll tell you what I'm already seeing, right? One of the most incredible joys is I've done a lot of book signing events, local events, and some of these people I know, or they know how to access me, and I'm getting messages right from friends and family and extended people. They'll send me a picture of the page that they're on, like this right here. This moment is unlocking me. Right. I get emails, I get LinkedIn messages. And like I was just reading this particular part of the book, you know, the part about not hiding myself, the part about asking for support in a dignified manner, right? Like I've never done that. Like all these already, we're 2 months into this journey and the messages keep coming and it's incredibly motivating for me.
Yeah. Just it's there's just got that real feel of the ripple effect,
Mhm.
impacting real people in their daily life in that moment in their day. And that's how we make all change, right?
Yes.
Mhm. I'm curious. This episode will go live in a couple of weeks. People will listen to it, but 6 months from now and a year from now, there will still be people who come, find this episode, listen to the conversation. What do you hope those listeners carry away with from listening to this conversation?
Yeah, my greatest hope for everyone that I'm encountering today, tomorrow, 6 years from now, right, is that they understand that their dreams and their goals matter. And it doesn't matter where they are in life. It doesn't matter how old they are. It doesn't matter if their dream has evolved. It used to be this and now it's that. It has value and there's a way to manifest it, right? It has value. It deserves time in the light. And through the work that I'm doing, I'm offering a roadmap for you to learn A, to believe that, to believe it has value, and to find ways to make it happen.
Yeah. This real message of hope, right?
Mhm.
You can want what you want and you can actually create that if you do the work. And oftentimes that goes along with getting some support and, some help along the way. What about you? 7 years in writing, all the work that you do with your clients. What have you learned about yourself through doing this work?
One of the things I talk about is that I am not the master of this topic, right? I am also a student of this topic. So for me, this isn't a thing like, oh, yeah, like I built the framework, but I am also I serve the framework, right? And I allow the framework to serve me. I live it because it's not just a cool thing that I learned, and it's for me a way that I've chosen to live. And it requires for me to pay attention, right? To catch myself to go, "Oh, no, no, is this fear? Am I making a decision on strategy or fear?" Right? Or, I've inserted, like, for example, I maybe have joined an organization. It's a wonderful organization, not in alignment for me. So there's a decision to be made about walking away, right? There's constantly times in my life where I have to be my own best student and execute on the things that I put out there that I believe in. So it's helped me organize how I think and how I live so that I am living in the ethos of what I believe.
One of the things that you said that really stuck with me is that there's this real feeling that the 7 permission framework is really truly an independent thing. I've seen a lot of frameworks, a lot of roadmaps, a lot of these, pillars of doing these things. And oftentimes it's not independent. It's just like a vehicle, as opposed to what you've just described is that it's actually independent, that it lives on its own and you work in it in your own way, you integrate it in your own way, and then facilitate your clients doing the same. Can you feel that difference? Like, do you really notice that difference in that the depth of it?
Tell you how that has manifested for me kind of in a practical way, right? There's the coaching that I have done where we are aiming at a specific result and doing these things, right? And there's different lanes in that highway, right? I want a better career. I want to be a better leader. I want a better business. This sits on top of all of that. It's kind of the umbrella as well as the foundation underneath,
Mm.
because this is about the way in which we choose to make decisions and the way we choose to act and be so that we can live in whatever of those lanes may be, whether again that's career, business, and even life. So yes, I do see how this is kind of independent of the mechanics because this is more of the value system as well as the decision system that we use so that we can kind of check ourselves a little bit and make sure we're not holding back.
Doing this work, the 7-year labor of love of writing and fine tuning this framework, if you had to boil it down to one idea that changed how you think about success, what might that be?
No matter what is happening in the world, and there are very real pressures and there are very real barriers, the reality is that most often what really stops us from going for what we really want and being who we really want to be, those reasons are internal. We have so much more control than we think we do. And we can build ourselves bigger, better, whatever that means for us. And that doesn't always mean more, it can certainly mean less. It's about authenticity and joy in what we do.
It's a great message. Liz, I am really pleased to have had this conversation with you. Now, I'm wondering, is there something in your message that we just haven't touched on? Like, is there one key thing that you always love to leave people with and we just haven't touched on it? Just want to open the floor to whatever comes to mind.
There's two things that occur to me. One of the chapters that tends to be a favorite is this concept of support, right? And it is incredible to me how often people are just truly struggling on their own, whether that's in their lives, right, trying to manage all the things. And so much of that, for women of my generation, comes from this idea that of going into the workforce and kind of getting the message that sure, you can come in, but you better take care of everything else too, right? So there's a lot of things that we just don't even ask for in terms of support, whether that is support at home, right? Something as simple as spreading out the chores, whether that's
Mm.
support in our careers, in the workplace. I talk about that a lot. So for me, it's so important that people understand that not only do you not have to do it alone, chances are you can't do it alone. And it's so important for me to for people to know that they have the right to ask for support. Now there's kind of, ethics and rules and thoughts around that. We want to do that in a dignified way, but it means more than just necessarily your best friend or your spouse. It can mean different things in terms of asking for support at home, asking for support at work, investing in coaching, therapy, you know, girls' night out, like whatever it means to you to be supported, please lean into that because you do not need to exhaust yourself. And frankly, you're just never going to have all the answers on your own. Support is a game changer.
It's a lot of ambitious women that are really pride themselves on independence. Like, I can do this myself. I can figure this out myself. And so the concept of support, whether it's physical support, get somebody else to clean your home or run your
Mhm.
errands, or if it's emotional support, there is that real who are you to give yourself permission to be able to even ask for it. Like, what kind of support do you need? And can you ask for it? Can you recognize it? And can you even ask for it, right?
And can you not let it be detrimental to your identity?
Mm.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think that there's some of this that can be different in the way men perceive that, the way women perceive that. Men kind of grow up with the idea that they're supposed to delegate, right? They're supposed to be the brainchild of things, and then other people execute, other people support. They tap into other people's ideas. Whereas women kind of really grow up with this kind of let's be superwoman, do it all ourselves. And frankly, I think that that's super limiting, right? And look, none of this is exclusive, right? There's no overarching rules here. It can vary so much regardless of gender identity. But I do think that we need to be really careful that we don't make ourselves less if we spread the work.
Liz, I have so enjoyed our conversation. And could you spend a couple of minutes sharing with the people who listen how they can find out more about you, how they can find out more about your book? And do you have a free gift that you can offer to the listeners as well?
So, absolutely. First of all, I am a champ on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I'm there all the time. You can find me at Liz M. Lopez. You can pretty much find me everywhere. Coach Liz M. Lopez. My website is lizmlopez.com. Super simple, right? You're seeing it right on the screen.
Yeah.
And then there is a free gift on my website for those who wish to participate in that. It will certainly invite you into my email community where I share really funny stories and then also some really good educational information as well as upcoming events. So I love being interactive. So I invite everyone to find me. You can find me on Instagram, you can find me on LinkedIn, and you certainly can find me on the website.
I love that there's so many ways to find you. Liz,
Mhm.
thank you so much for joining us today. And I know that the listeners are going to have taken away a lot. You probably have heard the big blank where I was thinking about the asking for support. I'm going to leave that in so people can really hear that. Every conversation brings another seed to our self awareness. Thanks again for joining us. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of She Coaches Coaches. If this conversation resonated, take a moment to reflect on what stood out and how it connects to where you are right now. Coaching businesses grow through clarity and thoughtful choices, not pressure or hustle. If you'd like more support, you can learn more at stepintosuccessnow.com. I'll put the link in the episode notes. And if you found this episode helpful, I'd appreciate it if you would share it with a peer or colleague who would enjoy it as well. I appreciate you being here. Have a great day.